Parents, imagine a situation in a toy store where your son picks up a Barbie doll or your daughter chooses a superhero toy. How would you react? Would you stop them or would you let them be? Here's a fact: children are not born with preferences for color or particular interests. It's societal gender roles that shape their likes and dislikes. And you'll be surprised at the extent to which this can limit a child's life choices and behavioral development. Today, we have parenting expert and psychologist Vidya Raghu sharing her views on how to raise a child in a gender neutral environment. So, are you ready? Let's dive in.
Have you of late observed children picking up, preference for colors? There are boys. I was very startled to see that there are boys who don't want to pick up toys and books and bags which are pink in color, and there are girls who don't want to pick up the blue in color, and that's quite confusing. And how does this happen? There are children who are just about 2 and 3 who have this preference, and this is closely linked to gender sensitization. Today we are going to look at what is gender sensitization and how much does it influence every aspect of our life. Gender sensitization is a very important element that every parent needs to take care of. In fact, if you see globally, there is so much of talk about gender parity, gender sensitization. The governments have been promoting gender sensitization programs in schools and colleges. Why this sudden, surge in gender sensitization topics? Why is everybody talking about it? And what is the need for today parents to bring it home? If we look at it, and if you look at what drives this whole thing, is there's been a lot of research happening to understand that gender biases and gender sensitization has a lot of impact on how the community and the society moves forward, which is your gender bias or your gender sensitivity governs the way that you behave with people in the environment, and more so you also the way you behave with your own self. Of late you would have seen there is so much of new things which is happening, LGBT and a lot of other things which are new, and whether we like it or not, our children are going to be in that kind of a world where you cannot shut down your television and say that I'm not going to look at this new advancement which is happening. It is happening. So LGBT has been made legal across the globe, and there is going to be conversations about what is gender. So when we're talking about this very important concept, and that too for children, specifically why we look at coming down to the level of children is because again research shows that gender biases or gender identity is created even before they start completely conversing, which is by the age of 2 and 3, somewhere around that age is where they develop the identity saying that I am a boy and I'm going to be like this, I am a girl and I'm going to be like this. So it's very important that they just don't understand their physical difference, but they also kind of develop the gender identity which is going to create a cohesive environment outside, not the one which alienates them or which makes them dominant in the society. So it's very important for us to look at this topic. So as we start looking at it, let's first understand what are the myths that are generally there. So whenever we take up a word like this, which is not a common, where everybody's talking about it, these are more from media, they're more the awareness topics. So when we look at a topic like that, we have to know what existingly is driving in our head, which is the myths. So the first thing is a lot of people globally have been confusing and using and intermixing. So you use sex in and gender in the same way. So when you fill up a form, there is a point asking saying male or female, which is the sex, which is your biological identity, which is different. And we confuse this with gender, and we also say that my gender is I'm a boy and a girl. It's not so. So let's understand what is gender and what is sex. Sex, as I said, is basically your biological identity, whereas gender is your social and emotional identity around that biology that you develop. So for example, if somebody is biologically they consider themselves a girl, then they start developing a social and environmental and emotional perception around it, saying if I'm a girl, this is the way that I would go about, or this is how things happen, or this is the way that I process my emotions, or this is the way that I speak, or this is what I will do. So everything around what they start doing after that, like what we just discussed, The identity gets created by the age of 2 to 3, and everything that they do after that is through this filter of who they are. That means their understanding of gender is very, very critical. Now, the second problem with the gender is that we have a myth that gender is binary. In everything, we take extremes. We either look at saying gender can be masculine, which is male, or it can be female. But since gender is more a social, emotional, environmental perception, it could also be somewhere in between. And that is where there are a lot of, it says, in fact, research says, 1 out of 2,000 children will have that, midpoint or somewhere in between, where they're neither this side of feeling like they're a female or neither that side of being a male. And we can't alienate those people. And neither with a lot of, if you've seen, there are a lot of dramas and things which happen and in school where children are preparing to be another character. And the moment they're stepping into the character, a boy stepping into the character of a woman or a girl in a drama, they're very comfortable, very, very uncomfortable, because that is very conflicting to their identity. But if they are able to understand and develop the empathy that everybody has their own understanding of gender, and it is okay for everyone to have their own acceptance and understanding of gender, whatever they have, that is gender sensitization, which is gender sensitivity. How much the person is okay to have their own perception and how much the person is okay for others to have their own perception. Because everybody will pick and choose on based on what is their preference. There are a lot of incidents where, for a very brief period of time, like when children are 3.5 and 4, and they just kind of, in the phase of shaping up their gender, we've seen, children putting up lipsticks, which is boys, or they're putting up nail paint and all of that. And immediately the people around start laughing, saying that you're a boy. Basically, what the child is trying to see is, align its emotions on saying that, okay, I'm a boy and I'm aligning to be a boy in gender, or I'm aligning to be a female in gender. So this part of it requires some experimentation, and they do that. So for us as parents, it's important that we guide them, we nurture them, but we don't really come down on them or we laugh at them when they're experimenting these things. So the myth around that we have to be careful about is gender is only two-way, either it's a female or a male. Children are in between, transitioning till it becomes very concrete, and each child can develop their own understanding. The second is that gender is basically very important. I mean, you have to go by the societal norms. Things are changing today. See, the one important aspect that we understand today is research is proving extensively that people are making their important life choices based on gender, their gender bias. There was a research in Washington where they've tried that, they had 2 different classrooms. One classroom had all of this, really cool science fiction stuff, a lot of space trek and all those kind of decor around it. And another classroom had the typical conventional classroom with, just boards and chair and maybe just, flower vases, plants and all of that, and some artwork. And at a point, when they asked for the preference amongst girls on choosing up a career in science and technology, the children in the room, where there was all science elements and which was generally considered a very male approach to the, classroom, a male kind of a decor, a male appealing decor, that in that room, children preferred to take science and technology, whereas in the other room, which was very conventional, where there's all art and, all those regular things, girls were more preferred to choose non-science, programs. But when it came to the boys, there was no difference, which means that girls are highly influenced by the environmental perception of what careers are to be taken. The same way they've done a lot of study to understand what happens in recruitment. In recruitment, when people are being recruited, again there is so much of a gender bias which is very unconscious. See, nobody is wanting to put a gender bias against anybody, but these are available in our environment. It is so much part of our thinking that without knowing, we're constantly either using it in our language or we are somewhere using it in our decisions. And it's very important that all of us wake up and understand that gender bias is not out there. It is not in somebody. Whenever we talk about an awareness subject, We, as as a society, we have a challenge with raising our fingers outside and looking at the bad men outside. But as a parent today, I want to request everyone to look at saying gender bias is not outside. It's very invisible and visibly available inside. We, as every individual in every home, have to take the responsibility to watch within and say, why am I doing what I'm doing? Or ask yourself saying, will this be true for both? Whenever we're saying things, like recently there was this beautiful ad where they'd shown saying boys and girls running for a racing competition, and the girl actually wins. You would have seen a lot of media today portraying women winning, which is good. But also at the backside, the boy's father stepped in and said, it's okay, you did well, only thing is the girl succeeded and you kind of failed behind. So those very small things are, you don't have to teach gender bias to children. They learn it. They pick it up saying that as a boy this is what I should be doing, as a girl this is what I should be doing, which is going to be very dangerous going forward, because the way things are going, children are going to really compete at the equal level. So girls will definitely move, but boys equally need to be empowered to move at that pace. Like in workplaces we are seeing, there's POSH which is coming. It's a new law which is coming, which empowers women to go and report challenges which is happening. But what we are seeing is men are feeling lower or inferior about saying there are too many things happening for women. Now all of this is happening because individually we're not taking responsibility. Individually we're not aware of where all we are playing this gender bias out. So as parents, what can we do with this, and how can we help our children? The first thing is look at the language that we're using at home. As much as what we're speaking, if you have two different children at home, or if you have children in your neighborhood or in your extended families, and you see boys and girls playing together, first thing is to discourage any conversation or any decision or any particular activity based on saying whether the child is a boy or a girl. Second is to also curb the kind of lot of comments, sarcastic comments that happen, especially comes from very senior people who are used to, elders who are used to that kind of a society which used to exist. Kind of dissuaded and let the child understand that it doesn't matter. So considering saying whatever they do in their day-to-day life, that should be called basic course, which is not about a girl or a boy. Or when you come to colors, a child may say that I only want a blue or I only want a pink. At that point, it's important for us to ask the question, why are you saying that? And invariably you will hear the child saying that's a boy's color and that's a girl's color. And you could ask saying, how do you know? It's a color. It doesn't say whether it's a boy's color or girl's color. Why don't we try and slowly encourage them to start using those colors, because once it's set, that will be a deciding factor for them in their life going forward. For example, if there is anything which they want, they would only go deciding based on this color is for this gender, this career is for this gender, these kind of activities are for that. So it's very important at this point in their early childhood, we encourage them and move them towards approaching something because they want to do it or they're interested in it, not because people say it's a girl's job or a boy's job. And over once we practice that as we go, children will develop tolerance. When they develop tolerance, the amount of challenges in relationship that we're seeing right now, in the last few years we've seen a lot of turmoil in relationship because of this unconscious gender bias which is there in people. So we are going to bring up a group of children who are clear that you're doing something because you want to do it, not because the gender is influencing you. So let's become clear that gender is not going to rule our lives, and gender is not the same as our sex. Gender is a choice. Gender is a perception. Gender is a emotional understanding or a social expectation or a social understanding of what one should do based on their biology. And each individual has their own understanding based on their culture. So let's develop the empathy and help our children also develop it.